It's a pleasure to be with you. The title of this talk is Boundary Spanning Leadership in Public Health, Boundary Concepts, Session 2. There are no disclosures for this presentation. Objectives include review the concept of boundaries as doors to new frontiers versus borders, define the 5 boundaries: vertical, horizontal, stakeholder, demographic, and geographic, describe the concept of the Great Divide, discuss the relationship of adaptive leadership skills to boundary spanning, describe the main tasks of leaders in spanning the 5 major boundaries faced by organizations. Many organizations view their organizational boundaries as a limit for their activities and outreach, an impenetrable fence and barrier as diagrammed here, beyond which they cannot and should not operate. They consider the area outside the boundary as dangerous, inhospitable, a place to be avoided. Boundary spanning leadership says this approach stifles creativity and innovation. A Center for Creative Leadership survey of 128 senior executives representing some of the world's best companies, including CEOs, presidents, senior vice presidents, and directors, demonstrated that 86% of those executives felt it was extremely important to collaborate with other groups across boundaries, but only 7% felt they were very effective at doing it. A 79% skill gap in something they felt was extremely important for their companies. This underlines the importance of boundary-spanning leadership concepts for not only businesses, but also for public health. Those 128 executives identified 5 major boundaries they needed to work across, including vertical boundaries between hierarchical strata of organizations, horizontal boundaries between units, functional groups, divisions, and programs in organizations, stakeholder boundaries with customers and suppliers, demographic boundaries in working with diverse groups, and geographic boundaries associated with distance and regions. This table lists the frequency of times a boundary was cited by leaders in the CCL study. The 128 leaders identified 181 examples of boundaries they encountered. Most leaders identified at least 1 boundary. Some described up to 4. Horizontal boundaries were cited by 71% of the leaders, followed by geographic by 26%. Stakeholder and demographic each by 17%, and vertical by 7% of the leaders. It was felt that the geographic, demographic, and stakeholder percents will rise dramatically in the next few years, while vertical boundary percents may decline as more organizations adopt and implement flatter and more open organizational systems. Leading across these 5 boundaries is the goal of boundary spanning leadership concepts. Boundary spanning leadership is defined as the ability to create direction, alignment, and commitment across boundaries in service of a higher vision or goal. Direction refers to creating shared goals and strategies for the collaborative or intergroup. Alignment means the joint coordination of resources and activities. Commitment relates to each group's commitment to the collective or collaborative group's success, something greater than the success possible by any individual group. A main point is that this approach must lead to a higher vision or goal that is beyond the ability of individual participating groups. They must be committed to work together in a new collaborative or partnership relationship. Boundary spanning leadership views organizational boundaries not as a barrier or closed gate, but as an open door to the outside. an exciting area of opportunity, innovation, and creativity, a new frontier. Boundary frontiers are where the most advanced thinking and breakthrough possibilities reside. Appropriate leadership of organizations open the gate between limiting boundaries and the limitless frontiers of creativity and innovation. Those frontier areas and opportunities can only be reached and realized through effective collaborations and partnerships with other groups. Boundary-spanning leadership describes how boundary-spanning collaborations and partnerships can result in a nexus effect, defined as the limitless possibilities and inspiring results that groups can realize together above and beyond what they can achieve on their own. Boundaries create borders that pull or keep groups separated. A quote from the book Boundary Spanning Leadership says, "To bring groups together to achieve higher goals or vision, it's necessary to understand the forces, like borders, that pull groups apart." Ernst and Charbot-Mason argue that boundaries result from the interaction of two fundamental, universal, and seemingly opposite human forces: needs for differentiation and uniqueness, and needs for integration and belonging. A group's need for differentiation and uniqueness is often based on deep beliefs, values, relationships, and associated with emotional attachments, loyalty, pride, respect, and trust. Boundary components attached to differentiation and uniqueness needs are not breached easily, and as a result, attempts to span boundaries are often associated with conflict. Many groups look at these boundaries as necessary borders separating us from them, creating a great divide, as represented by this picture of the Grand Canyon. This great divide is often associated with a lack of trust, little respect for the other group, sense of no common purpose or goals, concern about perceived threats, and no bidirectional ownership. This great divide limits creativity, innovation, and change, ignoring collaborative and partnership opportunities that can transform organizational outcomes for both groups. When groups divide into us and them, the energy between groups is spent on conflict and counterproductive behaviors versus innovative collaborations. Boundaries can't be managed away. They must be addressed and spanned through effective group process. Group process skills define the base for adaptive leadership, necessary for boundary-spanning work. According to Linsky and Heifetz's book, Leadership on the Line, leadership skills can be divided into two broad categories: technical leadership or management, and adaptive leadership, that I will also call extreme leadership. Both of these skill sets are needed for effective leaders. Knowing the difference and when to appropriately use them is extremely important. This slide lists some key attributes of technical leadership or management. Management solutions are fairly obvious, with a fix requiring minor adjustments, no major changes in the way things are done. Generally, people resist change, rising exponentially with a major overhaul. So minor changes will likely be less controversial in the organization than major ones. Things will continue much as they have in the past. In these situations, leadership can orchestrate the fix. They can manage it. The checkers are all on the board. They just need to be rearranged a bit. There may be some minor resistance in the organization, but these are not earth-shattering events that upset the apple cart. So managers face little risk of criticism, anger, and hostility with many technical management decisions. That is not the case with adaptive situations. Adaptive problems are often seen in times of crises. The solution to adaptive problems is not readily apparent. Adaptive situations and solutions need new approaches and major changes in the way an organization functions. A leader can throw all the technical management fixes they can generate at the problem, and it still persists. Adaptive problems require a group process to find an effective solution. So the role of the leader in an adaptive situation is not to line up the checkers. The leader must facilitate the group to find the checkers. This is actually true community engagement, facilitating communities to own their problems and solutions. Adaptive skills are essential for a leader to truly engage a target community. Adaptive leadership is also defined as extreme leadership. I want to reemphasize that effective leaders need both sets of skills and competencies, technical management skills and adaptive or group facilitation skills. According to Linsky and Heifetz in Leadership on the Line, the single most common source of leadership failure we've been able to identify in politics, community life, business, or the nonprofit sector is that people, especially those in positions of authority, treat adaptive challenges like technical problems. In other words, they try to manage their way out of situations that require group process. Understanding the difference between technical and adaptive skills and when to use them is critical for effective leaders of any organization. Boundary spanning is all about adaptive leadership. More detailed discussion of technical and adaptive leadership is covered in the leadership talks of the North Dakota Public Health Training Network curricula. Organizations commonly have well-defined levels of authority, a hierarchy, also called a closed system. Lower levels report to higher level supervisors. In this traditional setting, strategy flows down from top to bottom. There are barriers or vertical boundaries, locked gates, that prevent the bidirectional flow of strategic information between those groups. It's the role of those in the lower strata levels to make the strategy developed by the top level work, to increase the production of whatever the organization produces. Production of the organization is dependent on the work of those at the lower levels of the organization, the production lines. Many current organizational leaders question this traditional closed system model. Those leaders feel that the innovation required for future organizational growth and production will require engaging the heads, hearts, and minds of people across all levels of the organizational chart, resulting in a more flat organizational structure, an open system as diagrammed. Boundary spanners hunt for ideas and skills wherever they may be located in the organization, and are no longer tethered to the belief that authority is unidirectional, flowing from top to bottom. It's an open system, multi-directional, where talented people are engaged at all levels to collaborate. Horizontal boundaries are defined by activities, units, programs, sections, disciplines, etc. within an organization, with boundaries based on different skills and competencies. These borders are enhanced by unit differences due to competition for organizational funding, visibility and recognition internally and externally, loyalty to the group and the unit manager, etc. In this situation, units or groups in the organization often lose sight of the larger organizational vision and mission by focusing only on their siloed goals. Borders are enhanced and likely more difficult to span if these units meet the definition of a true cohesive community. A working definition of a true community and community engagement is different than the definition often used by public health that commonly defines a community by geopolitical boundaries. A community engagement specialist often defines community as people who know each other by first name and have a strong sense of commitment and responsibility for each other. Community identity may enhance individual group or unit function, but may also inhibit integration and limit overall organizational collaboration across units. A major challenge for a boundary-spanning leader is balancing unique unit identities that may represent true communities within the organization with the need to integrate with other units for the greater good. Successful integration is usually based on enhancing relationships between groups. As previously mentioned, a major challenge for a boundary-spanning leader is balancing unique unit identities that may represent true communities within the organization with the need to integrate with other units for the greater good. Boundary spanning works best at the margins, where programs and unit goals intersect. A boundary spanner must clearly identify those areas of intersection or boundaries will not be spanned. Successful integration is usually based on enhancing relationships between groups. In these areas of intersection, unit differences of knowledge, experience, skills, and competencies can be harnessed to develop fresh collaborative ideas and goals addressing new frontiers for the organization. These new ideas and collaborative goals may result in moving resources, including personnel, to where they are needed the most. Vertical and horizontal boundaries are both internal to the organization. Stakeholder boundaries are external to the organization. Stakeholder boundaries can be closed or open. External boundaries are different than internal ones. External organizations are out of a leader's control. Information may be limited. External strategies may not be clear. There are a lot of unknowns when a leader and his or her organization span beyond their boundaries and collaborate and partner with other stakeholders. Many organizations view stakeholder boundaries as an impenetrable fence and barrier beyond which they cannot and should not operate. They consider the area outside the boundary as dangerous, inhospitable, a place to be avoided. Boundary spanning leadership says this closed approach stifles creativity and innovation. Initially, leaders must clearly identify areas of overlap, areas of common priorities, goals, needs, values, etc., since these are the areas that both organizations will invest time, personnel, and other resources in to accomplish. This is a great safe place to start a collaborative relationship. The partnership must result in a win-win for all partners. This may mean compromising on certain areas of disagreement to move the relationship forward. The extreme concept of every organization for itself, maximizing individual organization interests at the expense of the interests of external partners, undermines boundary-spanning collaborations and partnerships. This area of common goals and initial collaboration allows for the development of trust, respect, and a relationship that can weather the adaptive challenges of new horizons or frontiers. Relationships take time. Moving too fast into adaptive situations before relationships, respect, and trust are well established will likely result in failure. Once adequate strength of relationships, trust, and respect are established, the groups can reset collaborative boundaries to enter new frontiers that include new wins for each partner. These new wins can only be accomplished by the partners or groups working together. Interdependence of partners is essential to accomplish these new wins. If these new wins can be accomplished by the organization itself, then the partnership is not needed. Boundary-spanning leaders must have the skills and judgment to identify common goals, clarify significant win-wins for all partners, develop relationship strength, and judge when that relationship is strong enough to weather adaptive challenges, and then facilitate the group to identify new wins that will motivate them to expand boundaries to new frontiers. There are incredible opportunities, but also significant risks of failure for boundary-spanning leaders. Boundary-spanning leadership is not for the faint of heart. Vertical and horizontal boundaries are both internal to the organization. Stakeholder boundaries are external to the organization. The last two major boundaries identified by leaders were demographic and geographic, both of which can be internal or external to an organization. We'll now consider the demographic boundary for a few minutes. The world is a diverse place. Humans are different in many ways, including gender and sexual orientation, race, education, and ideology. This list is not comprehensive, but covers major demographic boundaries identified by organizational leaders. Diversity, depending on how it is managed, can stimulate creativity and innovation or result in conflict and division. The Center for Creative Leadership Research identified three organizational approaches to handling demographic diversity. Hands-off, where the organization was inactive in managing diversity boundaries. Direct and control, where the organization actively monitors and reinforces demographic boundaries. And cultivate and encourage, where organizations create an environment to encourage healthy, creative, and collaborative intergroup relationships. All three approaches are common in organizations today. Yet the research demonstrated a distinct global employment advantage for organizations utilizing the cultivate and encourage approach. Boundary-spanning leaders value human differences, minimize diversity divides, and maximize the creative tension of diverse perspectives. One of the best ways to do that is to create heterogeneous teams spanning the various demographic boundaries. Let's now consider geographic boundaries. Geography matters for organizations including public health. This not only applies to local geography dealing with urban or rural issues, but also the impact of world events. Organizations have satellite sites spanning counties, states, the nation, and internationally. We live in a global village. Public health disease control is a good example. Not only concerned with local disease outbreaks, but also with issues like Zika in Brazil, Ebola in West Africa, influenza in Asia, and measles epidemics in Europe, since a disease is often only one airline flight away. This networking for disease control requires intimate collaboration and partnerships with organizations locally to those around the world, spanning virtually every culture on Earth. Over decades, CDC leadership utilized boundary-spanning concepts to create and maintain this worldwide partnership. The boundary of this disease control partnership community encompasses the whole world. All boundaries express elements of cultural diversity, yet cultural diversity may be even more prominent in geographic boundaries. As with demographic boundaries, geographic and cultural diversity, if managed appropriately, can stimulate creativity and innovation. If mismanaged, it can cause conflict and increase cultural divides. This points out a major challenge for boundary-spanning leaders that we've mentioned before: delicately balancing the integration of groups while at the same time honoring and maintaining local identity and cultural diversity. When dealing with geographic boundaries, boundary-spanning leaders must have a basic understanding of cross-cultural concepts. Cross-cultural concepts are covered in other leadership and communication sessions of the North Dakota Public Health Training Network. This slide summarizes the suggestions from the book Boundary Spanning Leadership for defining your own personal Nexus challenge. Step 1. What are the most challenging leadership issues you face? Step 2. Of these issues, which ones can only be solved by leading across boundaries that must meet the following criteria? Must require reaching across boundaries. Must deal with human relationships and identity, or who we are versus operational issues, what we do. Must require new approaches to leadership since what was done in the past isn't working very well. Step 3. Choose one issue that is best suited to boundary spanning concepts. This is your Nexus challenge. Step 4. Describe your challenge by answering 4 questions. What is your challenge? Give it a headline, 4 to 10 words. Why is this a challenge? What would happen if you were to solve this challenge? How have you attempted to solve this in the past? What worked? What didn't work? There are 6 skills or practices associated with boundary spanning leadership, each building on the preceding skills. 1. Buffering. 2. Reflecting. 3. Connecting. 4. Mobilizing. 5. Weaving. And 6. Transforming. By using these 6 sets of skills, a leader creates the direction, alignment, and commitment between groups to achieve critical organizational outcomes. In summary, boundaries can be viewed as barriers or gateways to creativity and innovation. Effective boundary spanning requires collaboration and group facilitation skills to address all 5 major boundaries facing organizations. The most common boundaries encountered are horizontal and geographic. Effective boundary spanning creates direction, alignment, and commitment in service of a higher vision or goal. Effective boundary spanning can lead to a nexus effect, where collaborators can realize results above and beyond what they can achieve on their own. Boundary spanning leadership is essentially adaptive leadership.